As if not saints. What do you believe in?
Myself.
Why'd I even ask?
And you. And Jesper. My crows.
Because we flocked to your bidding. Like the animals of vengeance you named us after.
Crows don't just remember the faces of people who wronged them. They also remember those who are kind.
Hey, I'm Derek.
And I'm Noah. And you're listening to A Bite of,
where we take our current favorite pop culture obsession and enjoy it one nibble at a time.
and we are almost done. We're at the penultimate episode, Shadow and Bone.
If there is one word that we say every season of A Bite of that is my favorite, it is penultimate.
Why? Because it's almost over?
No, because it's just a great word.
It's a fun word.
Right?
Yeah. So we're almost done. Before we get into this episode and discussing the very, very, very finale of Shadow and Bone, make sure you just stop real quick. Give us that 5-star review. Write a little something. Let us know how you like the show. And also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at A Bite of Pod.
Look, you're probably on your phone anyway. So just take a second. Thank you.
I mean, it is the best way to spread the word.
Woohoo! All right, so before we go forward, let us take a look back at the last episode. So in Shadow and Bone, episode 6, The Heart is an Arrow, all of our characters are on the move. Alina escapes from the crows and is found by Mal. The Darkling puts together a team to track her down and has a showdown with Kaz, Jesper, and Inej. Nina and Matthias are shipwrecked and have a flirty back and forth until the very earth underneath them gives way.
Literally.
Mm-hmm.
No Nina and Matthias in this episode. Again,
Nope.
just every other one.
I wonder if that's it. Maybe that was it. We just kind of got their little backstory of how they first met, and 'tis all.
Boo.
Bring us more Nina and Matthias, please. And of course, spoiler warning. If you don't want to be spoiled, do not proceed. So you have been warned.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Spoiling a lot of key points for future stuff in the books, too. So,
Oh, yeah.
big warning.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let us officially take a bite of Shadow and Bone, Episode 7, The Unsea.
We start off with the flashback.
Whoa! Going back to the past.
In this episode, we get 400 years in the past with a long-haired, probably younger Kirigan
Yeah.
at this point. So in this time, the Grisha aren't... There's no second army. They don't have the protection of the king. They're hunted down by this current king's army men.
Mm-hmm.
And so is General Kirigan. Well, at this point, I guess he's just Alexander. It's going to be hard not to call him General Kirigan or the Darkling.
Or the Black Heretic.
But I really feel like this scene... I was hoping for like a Killmonger from Black Panther, like retelling of this character in the show, because they've been kind of doing a little different things with a lot of characters.
Mm.
And this was really to try to humanize him. I mean, why else are we getting this little backstory of General Kirigan this far into the show without it being like, well, this is his motivations. This is what happened. It didn't change anything for me.
I agree. And I think that on one hand, it's showing us how the fold was created, which I think is needed. But on the other hand, because of this sort of love interest thing that happens, it is trying to humanize the Darkling.
A mass murderer. Yeah,
Right.
Sure.
And I always think it's sort of interesting when sort of people with powers are seen as dangerous. You know, I think for a lot of it, we see like Superman or Spider-Man or the Avengers, and they're always, for the most part, seen as like these great heroes. So when it gets like sort of X-Men-y, when they're seen as dangerous or as mutants, and that's how the Grisha are handled, I always think that's an interesting take on it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the more powerful you are, the more scared that non-powerful people are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how it would be in the real world anyway.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we meet up with General Kirigan, and he's on the run with this girl, Luda. And turns out she's a healer, and they obviously have some love interest type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to flee together, and there's some talk. So we also find out here that just because he's the Darkling and how powerful you are doesn't mean necessarily you're immortal.
Right.
it's more Bagra and the Darkling have used people to extend their life. Even though they're descendants from Marazova, it doesn't matter. They've been like using people to prolong their life. That's neat, I guess. It just kind of feeds into the whole, like, they're not great.
No.
They're even using their own kind to perpetuate this. So they hide in this cottage. They're about to flee, and the king's men come and surround them. He goes outside. They want to take him into custody. They start shooting him with arrows inside. Luda is healing him every time he gets shot. Then she gets discovered. He gets put in chains. This dude that's running this Kingsman people is like, we don't need her. We kind of just need you. They stab her right in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, no, breaks out of his bindings, and then decapitates all 20 men with one fell cut.
Yes. A supercut, if you will.
Ooh, supercut. He then takes a dying Luda to a Grisha hideout.
Yeah, like a safe house.
Right. And there's no healers there. I guess she was the only healer around. They have a tailor. I guess that's great, but
yeah,
they can't heal her. So she ends up dying. He then goes and talks to Mama Bagra. And just a little younger Bagra at this point, too. She doesn't have the gray hair.
Mm-hmm.
And Bagra tells Kirigan that he just needs to leave, to wait it out, but let this king die, go to Kirch, and then come back and solve a problem only Grisha can. Like, this is what we need to do at this point. But he tells her he wants to build an army. He wants to use Morozov's magic to increase his power. And she's like, no. We don't do that. We do little science here. Like, we don't dabble in magic. So I'm confused because people in this show have said it's magic, but Bagra's like, we don't do magic. We do little science. So I'm not.
I don't know. Maybe he makes it magic later on.
I don't know.
No, it's little science, small science, whatever it is. I also find it sort of interesting that Bagra is like laid up in a bed at this point, and like when she walks into the room, she's coughing. So it's like she's sick, but we never really see her sick. So somewhere along the line, she's healed. I don't know why in this moment she's sick.
Well, it's just she hasn't been able to prolong her life at this point. Maybe there's no healer there.
Gotcha.
I mean,
okay,
that's how I got that.
I mean, this really sort of sets the trend of how he has gone about using people in his life. I mean, we kind of get that warning from Genya a while back, and even from Bagra that says he just spends his life manipulating people to use them.
He has this thing, and it's like this self-righteous grief, this like huge narcissistic thing. It's like, oh, I'm all powerful. Why am I not just automatically omnipotent?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but that's just not how it works, especially your atrocities that you keep doing. I don't think that you're going to be in that position. No wonder General K.
No one's going to like you at the end of it, so
No.
You should probably proceed with caution.
He then goes and rummages through some old texts.
To the library!
Always to the library.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's where all the information is.
Mm-hmm.
And finds a spell, ? Incantation, ? It's literally not explained at all in the show, so I was a little confused. I'm like, oh, I guess there's just spells lying around in this box.
Yeah, well, the way I took it is since they seem to be descendants of Marazova, they might have his old texts. So he goes to find them. He rummages through the family heirlooms in the attic or something. They really need an archivist because this stuff is just falling apart. It looks terrible.
But it's just lying there?
Yeah.
Like, all he had to do was find, it wasn't like it was in a book, but it was like a little Post-it note.
Listen.
He's like, by the way, the most powerful spell ever on a Post-it note.
It says like, it's like milk, eggs, incantation to solve all of Shadow Summoner's problems.
Want to create the Shadowfold? Say this.
And he gets this piece of paper and he reads it, and it's sort of indistinct because he's just like, how many do you want?
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets black veins on his neck, and we know that that's not good.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe this is the magic that Bagra was telling him to not mess with.
He probably shouldn't have.
And then guess what he did?
He messed with it.
He messed with it.
And then more Kingsmen find Jero Kirigan and their hideout. He goes outside to confront them. They want to take him into custody. But, things don't go as planned. Him and his, I don't know, quest for power, grief, whatever you want to call it, he creates the Shadowfold out of wanting to, quote unquote, make Grisha safe, not wanting them to persecute. I agree with that part. But it just seems like his motivations and everything he's doing, it doesn't seem to really line up with it, because when the girl Luda died and she's like dying right there, he says just mortal. It's like, what? Okay. Yeah. But like, that's all you care. Like, you don't, she wasn't able to spend her life with you or whatever. It was weird. It's such like a brush offy thing. It's like, you seem to be upset about it, but it's like, oh, you were never going to be my equal anyway. And he just kind of brushes it off.
Yeah,
so
maybe
it's
again,
weird.
it's the pacing of the show and what they decided to put in. I don't know. But I think this scene is interesting here where we kind of get some little tidbits about how some of the things work or how things proceeded. So when this new, I don't know, King's guy sees him, he says, spread your arms wide because your hands must touch first in order to use your powers. So that kind of goes back to the questions that you and I have had about why do they need their hands together, blah, blah. So apparently, I guess in order to start the small science, you need to touch your hands first.
But is that true though? Like, I think it's interesting. I don't think that's necessarily, it doesn't follow through with a lot of the other stuff. Because we saw that Inferni in the last episode that Kaz fought, he only used one hand.
Yeah.
He just grabbed flame from the candle and the other one. So I think it's interesting. Maybe he needs to do it for the cut.
Yeah, or maybe it's just the Darkling's powers at this point. And then also, he infects the army when he says his incantation.
Mm-hmm.
They get like the veins on their necks. And I'm guessing they've become the Vulcra.
Yeah, he says that I have no army, but I'm going to remake yours into mine.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. I thought this whole scene, this whole him creating the Shadowfold, I was like, this is great. This whole scene was lit.
Darkly.
Lit darkly.
But it's almost as if he's put shadow into their bones.
How long were you waiting to say that this whole season?
Just when I wrote it in my notes. Just before.
I like you connected the title with something that happened.
That's
in the
what
show.
it means.
Exactly.
What else does it mean? I don't know.
It's the closest thing to a name drop in the show that we're possibly going to get. It took me a while reading the book to be like, why is it called Shadow and Bone? It's like, oh, Shadow, Darkling, Bone, Stag.
Right.
Makes sense.
Got it.
I never got it when I was first reading it. So after he creates the Shadowfold, he goes back, thankfully, and saves Mama Bagra and flees. She wakes up and she's like, what have you done? She sees the Shadowfold in the distance. Thus, it is born and everybody dies that tries to go through it.
Yeah. It's the worst piece of art brought home from school a kid has ever done.
But he's
Look,
like,
Mommy,
I made something.
I made something. No, I can't put that on the fridge with a magnet, you turd.
So that ends the flashback that we get, the scene that's trying to not only give some exposition and explain why he created the fold. It is a little different from kind of how it's explained in the book. Like they gave him a love interest in this one, which he kind of just swatted away and didn't seem like it was that, important to him. So I don't know. It was just to explain the Shadowfold.
Yeah. Just to give us that backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, I mean, the backstory that's in the book, at least the first one, is just like he was drunk with power. He wanted more power, so he created the Shadowfold. So
Right.
This gives it a little more validity in this world, which I think is better depicted on screen than him just being like, I'm mad, Shadowfold.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So we're going to talk about the crows in this because their scene is really what they're going to do next. And we talked about that in the last episode. Like, what are they going to do now? They didn't get Alina. So what now?
So they're $1 million Kruger in debt at this point.
So we meet up with them and they're in a stable. And Inej is still injured from the fight with the Grisha in the last episode. Due to the complexity that their job has now faced, Kaz is like, we need to head back to the barrel. It's like our funds are being depleted. What are we supposed to do now? There's a Darkling, there's a stag, it's a lot.
Yeah, and on top of those sort of physical things, the fact that they're sort of falling apart at the seams as a group, as a team, is also impeding them kind of going forth together.
Yeah.
Because he and Inej now are kind of at odds, and Jesper's just in the middle like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, Jesper's really playing the mediator, and he wants to please both of them, but it's more of, I think Jesper knows the right thing to do, but Inej and Kaz are really the stark differences.
Yeah.
Like, he's very cynical and very job-orientated and very like, we need to do this, but he cares, but he doesn't like to show it. And then Inej is like, her faith is a huge deal to her. She doesn't want to go back to the menagerie. What is she supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
And in this scene, speaking of the menagerie, she's stitching herself up, which, I mean, let's talk about how badass she is that she's just sitting there on a bed of hay, stitching herself up.
Having a very full, coherent conversation with Jesper while shoving a needle through her skin.
But possibly one of the darker canon things to come about with her is he's like, where did you learn to do that? And she's like, at the menagerie. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
that sucks. Like, you're seeing more and more of like what's important to her and why she absolutely does not want to go back.
No.
Why would she? So Jesper tells her, I get it. Like, I can't, like, if you don't go with us and you stay here or you don't go back to Ketterdam, I can't tell you how to take your shot at freedom.
Right. And if you think about it, if she stays there, the odds of Helene getting people across the fold to find her are super small.
She has much more room to hide.
Right. Rather than Kaz's plan of, let's go back to Ketterdam, where you're an indentured servant.
Yeah. And that you gave away the deed to the Crow Club. I mean,
they got nothing in Ketterdam, people.
No, I mean, that million Kruga could have helped them a lot. But then it's also like, okay, if the Sun Summoner is real, do they give it to their employer? What are they going to do with her?
Wouldn't it have been awesome if the screen adaptation of Shadow and Bone ends with them capturing Alina, giving her to those people, and that's it?
That's it?
That's it.
No
the
more.
fold stays. Nothing happens. That's it. The end. They get a million Kruger and they live life fancifully.
I mean, that's great for the crows, not for Ravka.
Not for the rest of the world, but the three of them will be fine.
We also get this interesting scene. I do want to say that Kaz has yet to win me over. I feel like he a little bit more won me over in this one because he actually is involved in the crows' banter a little bit. Like, he does a great deadpan, which I like, but we get this conversation with Inej and Kaz, and she's pretty much telling him that she's going to leave because if they're not going to do the job, she doesn't want to go back to Ketterdam, and you can't blame her for that. He's being a little cold to her at first about leaving, and he decides to open up a little bit when he sees, like, oh, she is actually leaving, because she's like, oh, that's it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, bye. And he's like, wait. Wait a second. He reveals to her, out of trying not to sound like a one song record. What's that expression?
I don't know. Record on repeat?
There we go.
Repeating record?
Yeah. That he believes that she's the Sun Summoner. Not a saint.
Right.
But he does believe that she's Grisha. And she's like, oh, tell me more. Mm-hmm. How do you feel about that? He has a lot of baggage, and she does too. There's the will they, won't they, where are they going with their relationship? And I feel like Inej constantly is like giving him stuff, and it's probably hard for her to open up, especially to somebody as cold and distant as Kaz. And he just gives her a little bit at a time to keep her. Mm-hmm. It's like emotional hostage.
Sure.
That's how I felt.
I mean, the thing with their relationship is that he always wants to portray it as it's just sort of a business transaction.
Right.
The only reason I'm keeping you around, the only reason I'm getting you your freedom is so I can use you. But I think that's the difference between Kaz and the Darkling, is that the Darkling is really keeping people around solely so he can use them, but he makes them feel like there's a different attachment there. Whereas with Kaz, he is keeping them around because he cares for them, but he's trying to make them think it's only because he's using them.
Right. He tells her that he doesn't believe in Saint Alina, but he believes in Inej and Jasper and himself. I mean, he believes in his crows.
Right.
And there's a cute little thing that he says that, you know, they say that crows always remember the faces that wrong them. Mm-hmm. But he flips it and he's like, but they also remember the faces that were kind to them.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, Kaz.
Which is awesome.
That's sweet.
And I agree. And I feel like I actually really find myself moving over to Kaz in this moment. Because like you said, he's been so stoic. He's been so standoffish that you kind of didn't like it. But seeing him open up here, you're like, oh, I understand him now. And I do also like the fact, and I have to agree with him more, that just because Alina is a sun summoner doesn't mean she's a saint.
No.
You know, she has power, but she's just a regular person who has power. Mm-hmm. And we can believe in her, but we don't have to put faith in her.
Yeah, I mean, as
a religious token.
Right, exactly. I think he's he's more reasonable in his approach, and Inej being within that faith, and that's part of her character, that's part of who she is. Of course, she's going to believe it as soon as she sees it.
Right.
Because it's the thing that she's been waiting for, and she sees it, and she's like, okay, Saint Alina, hello.
Exactly. And I mean, us as an audience, we have seen Alina's side being like, I'm just a person.
Which is a through line for her.
Right.
And it's a trope as old as time.
The Bella Swan trope.
Right. It's like, I'm a normal, meek, boring person. Oh, I am very important to the safety of the entire universe. Hello.
As it goes. I guess that's more of the Katniss Everdeen, not the Bella Swan.
Right. Yeah, Bella Swan was just, she fell in love with the vampire.
Yeah.
That was
she could run fast later on, but that's about it.
The end of this conversation that we get with them, Kaz tells Inej that he's not going to let her go back to the menagerie. He's like, regardless, even if we do go back to Ketterdam, I'm not going to let you, like, come on. Like, I might be, like, cold and stuff, but, like, I love you, girl. I'm not going to let you go back there.
You will always be my boo.
And I do want to say, so when they first start talking, Inej hands him his cane back, and he's like, Jesper fixed it. How is that, like, how did he fix, like, with farm tools?
Wood glue.
So weird. I was like,
course.
oh.
I didn't even know that his cane got damaged with the cut with the Darkling.
Yeah.
But listen, Jesper is a man of many talents, and one of his talents is working with wood.
He wears many hats, literally and figuratively.
Absolutely.
They plan now to get across the fold. They're going to use Arkin's transport. They know where his track is in his little his train car, and as they're scoping it out, making their plan, it explodes, weirdly enough.
Yeah, so don't forget that the Darkling now knows about the train that goes through the fold, so he sent his soldiers there to take care of it. The crows are thinking, well, they're just going to, take a look at it and leave. And, Kaz is like, look, while you guys were panicking about the Volcra, I was there making calculations in my head, memorizing the different timings. I'm going to get us across this thing. Meanwhile, do they have 20 pounds of coal? I don't know, but whatever. We're not going to get into it.
True.
But then the soldiers, the Darkling must have been like, blow it up.
I just think it was funny that the irony of them being right there and then it blows up in front of their face. They're like, oh, just like your plan this whole time. It just keeps blowing up in your face.
Everything keeps blowing up. Nothing's working out for the crows because they didn't exist in this story to begin with.
That's true. Very true. They have to tiptoe lightly.
Yes.
So their next plan is to board the skiff that General Kirigan and Alina and all of these people from the Winter Fete are going to be on to have another demonstration. Everybody thinks this to destroy the fold.
Right.
The Sun Summoner is coming to destroy the fold. So they're like, okay, we'll just go on that. And Inej and Jesper are like, won't people recognize us? And he's like, no, we'll just get different outfits. We'll counterfeit papers. We'll be fine. So that's
I guess
their
there's
plan.
other things to look at on the skiff if the Sun Summoner is going to be there. So a new outfit will do the trick.
Probably. I do want to say, so they steal some outfits, they get some counterfeit papers, and they're like, oh, here, Jesper. They keep making this line of like, he looks older than he is. I'm like, he looks 18, 20. Are they seeing something that I'm not seeing?
Maybe there's a through line in the Crows stories that we don't know about yet where they constantly like get on his age or something.
I don't know. I just thought it was.
Hey guys, comment below if you know why they keep talking about Jesper's age.
So that's where we leave off with the Crows. They have the papers, they have the outfits, they're going to get on the skiff. What their plan is after that, are they going to try to grab Alina again? Or are they just trying to get through the fold? Who knows? So we then meet up with Alina and Mal. They're still hunting for the stag. They're hiding out. And Alina tells Mal that she needs to be the one to kill the stag. Like, I don't know a lot about this, but she's like, I need to kill the stag. That way I can use its power. And Mal's like, okay, you're a terrible shot, but I'll aim it for you and pull the trigger and we'll be fine. Mal asks if she has to wear the bones. And she's like, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I kind of have to. So I think it's interesting that we've seen throughout this a little bit, we see like Ivan and some of the other ones have like things infused in their hands and stuff. It's like, okay, they have amplifiers of some sort. Zoya has the tiger's tooth that's in the books, it's a bracelet.
Right.
But in the show, they took it a step further and infused the amplifiers into them, which I think is much cooler than wearing like a statement piece of jewelry.
Right. And that's one of the things that the apparat told her when he brought her to the library at the little palace. He says it has to be fused to their bodies.
Right.
So it's not just wearing the piece of the amplifier. It actually has to become a part of you.
Mm-hmm. Great change from the book.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Then Mal hears that high-pitched whistling that he talked about in an earlier episode. So this is spoiling something for Mal. They're setting it up. They set it up much more in the show than they did in the book. And he's able to sense amplifiers. He's able to sense Alina because he's in tune with it. That's all I'm going to say. I really don't want to spoil that part of this character for you guys. So they know where the stag is, and they go and head towards that. They find the stag very easily.
Yes.
But I do want to point out, they have not kissed yet.
I know. They do such smooching before this in the book.
Yeah, their first kiss is while they're trying to keep warm and looking for the stag. Before they find the stag, they have their first kiss. So they haven't had it yet. I wonder if we're going to get their first kiss.
Do you think it's going to be like the Fifth Element, where in order for her to unleash her final power,
He has to kiss her?
The element is love and he has to kiss her?
I mean, that's sweet. I'm always down for love being the conqueror of
Love
darkness.
is the answer.
So they end up finding the stag. Alina takes aim, and she's going to take the shot, but then she's like, wait, there has to be another way to do this. I also don't want to kill this beautiful, gorgeous creature that's in front of me, so let me go and pet its little nose for a minute. She poaches a stag, touches it, and her power blooms.
Yeah.
As soon as she touches it, it's obviously amplifying her in some way.
Right.
And everything seems like, okay, this is good. She can just like ride the stag into the Shadowfold and just destroy it.
Sit in its antlers.
But then the stag gets shot.
Yeah.
General Kirigan, Zoya, Ivan, the whole gang is there. They shoot the stag.
Even worse, Mal gets an arrow through his back.
Yeah, Mal gets the arrow through his back.
Oof.
So now it's this thing of, okay, who's going to kill the stag? Mal's hurt. Alina's like, I don't know what's happening. She goes and puts a protective dome of light over Mal and the stag. The stag is wounded. Mal is wounded. General Kirigan makes a interesting entrance into the scene. He floats into darkness. So can he fly now? Can he travel through darkness?
Shadow can propel you into worlds unknown and also through the wood.
He throws a cut. It gets deflected by the dome of light. Mal tells her that she has to kill the stag. He tries to hand her a knife. If in this moment, I don't know what she's thinking. I think she's more of like, let me save Mal.
Right.
And not the stag. She takes down her defenses. She goes to Mal's defense. And General Kirigan cuts off the head of the stag.
This dude loves cutting heads off of things.
I mean, it looks so cool. And apparently it can cut through like anything except for a dome of light. So I would be using it constantly.
Yikes.
So now with the amplifier killed, Mal hurt, General Kirigan is like, heal Mal. So now we obviously know that he wants Mal alive to have some leverage to Alina.
So this whole scene is incredibly dark. Not like, in lighting, but also in tone. You know, we see Mal, he's got blood coming out of his mouth. And as Alina is trying to protect the stag, she sees basically the love of her life dying in front of her. So of course she's going to let it down. But then, I mean, like when he hacks the head off the stag, it's pretty horrific.
Yeah. I will say though, the book was a little more graphic.
Yes.
In what they did.
The part that I actually wasn't looking forward to the most was in the book, they really talk about them sawing the antlers off the stag's head. This is not even a part.
We just see decapitated.
Yeah, like a clean cut right through.
Right.
And it's still upsetting, though, because it's so beautiful. It has these amazing antlers. It's something that Alina has been connected to her entire life. She's seen it in her dreams. She's been drawing it since she's a little girl. And in that one moment, it's taken down.
Right. And also, this animal did nothing wrong. It's just kind of living its best white stag life with its beautiful antlers.
I mean, I like to think that this stag is the sun summoner of its stag world and has always been connected to the sun summoner of the human world and has known its fate this entire time.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I feel like it's known Alina just as Alina has known it. But still, I don't like it when animals die. I mean, this whole episode makes me very uncomfortable. One, because of the animal dying, but there's a lot of things in here where we're talking about men using women.
Right.
And this is when we start to see Kirigan take advantage of Alina. And it just, that sort of story arc makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, this episode was really painting a picture of a relationship between an abuser and the abusee, and what somebody in General Kirigan's position has done to get to where he wants to go, and then doesn't matter about the path of destruction or lives or abuse that they've left behind. And I think this is what makes it hard for me, for people that are like, oh, the Darkling this, oh, the Darkling this. I like the Darkling and Alina. And I'm like, but he's awful. Like,
right.
I know, regardless of like what he's trying to do or if he actually loves Alina, he's still a mass murderer. He still created the fold that killed Alina's parents.
Yeah, he's like a gaslighting, manipulative, sociopathic murderer.
Right. And so I can't get on board with it. I never will.
I don't care if it's Ben Barnes. People.
Ben Barnes cannot make me love the Darkling.
Ben Barnes are not. Okay? Bad wigs are not. I don't care.
Bad wigs. All right. So we meet up with Alina, Kirigan, and David, and they're by the Shadowfold at a encampment. And David is going to put the antlers on Alina. General Kirigan tells her, you need to cooperate because we got Mal.
Right.
And his life is at stake.
Your little boy toy. We're going to kill him if you don't let us do it.
He then says the same speech that he's kind of been saying this entire time, where he's like, we need to work together. We're better together. And she's like, is this to destroy the Shadowfold?
Evades the question.
He never answers it.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He just simply does not answer it. And then she kind of agrees to let the antlers be put on her. 1, she doesn't really have a choice. 2, Mal's life is at stake. And 3, she's being manipulated by him again. David places the antlers on her collarbone, places another piece on General Kirigan's hand, stands in the middle of them, holds both of them, and fuses the antlers to Alina. Now we find out that General Kirigan has control over her light.
Right.
Because a part of the antlers are fused in him, the antlers are fused on her. He's the one that killed the stag. It's a big mess.
Nothing is more gross than a human enslaved amplifier. And she says to him, this is my power. And he says to her, but now I control it.
No, you can't. Do not be manipulated by him again. He is consistently lying to you.
Okay, listen. I have not read the other books, but if the end of this series does not end with Alina using a light cut to decapitate the Darkling, I am going to be furious.
Yeah.
He deserves that and more.
Completely. In this conversation, there's talk about how telling half the story isn't the same as lying. It absolutely is.
No, it's lying. You're lying.
Because you purposefully omitted important parts out of the story to tell a narrative you wanted to tell.
Yeah.
Even because she's like, well, Bagra told me this. And he's like, that's only half the story. She's like, but you didn't say anything otherwise. So what am I supposed to do here?
He's a bad politician, basically.
Yes. So he can control her light now. We later meet up with Alina. She's being held in a very fancy tent. Lots of fur, mirrors everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And Jenya comes to visit. But Jenya looks a little different.
Mm-hmm.
She has a red kefta on.
Crimson
kefta. She doesn't like it because it clashes with her hair. And
Agreed.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
She's right.
Was beautiful in her white and gold. I know that's not like a Grisha color.
Right.
But it just looked good on her.
And also just think of the symbolism, right? So when we meet her in the palace, she's white, she's pure, she's her friend. Uh-oh, we're seeing her now. She's in red. She looks dangerous. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
We'll find out.
She tells Alina that the king is sick, the apparat is in his place, and the queen is in hiding because she doesn't want to get sick.
Coronavirus.
Too real. Obviously, that means the king was poisoned, the queen is being held, and the apparat has now moved into place.
Yeah.
What all does that mean? We will not know this season.
Unless this next episode is 2 hours long.
Yeah, right. Alina puts the pieces together, and Jenya has been a spy for General Kirigan since she was 11.
Disgusting.
Right. And also, cherry on top, she was the one that didn't send Mal's letters. She purposely did not send it.
Yeah.
But she tells her that she was a Grisha without colors, that she did what she had to do. She talks about all the years of abuse that she suffered from the queen and the king, and what does she expect her to do? She's like, what what am I supposed to do at this point? Alina tells her that the king deserves your vengeance, but General Kirigan doesn't deserve your loyalty. Alina also tells her, like, I get it. I've been an outsider too. That was a very stupid line. I don't think she can compare her things to what Genya went through. I think they're two completely different things.
100%. And also, I mean, Alina, I get it. You're the sun summoner, but you've been in Genya's life for, if I'm being generous,
2 weeks.
2 weeks, a month, maybe. Right. This woman has endured 10 plus years of abuse. Back off.
Right.
You know, if you unfortunately had to fall in some way for her to survive, I don't know. I can't fault her for that.
Yeah, it's this interesting thing of, so she was put into, I mean, she was trafficked into the king's care at age 11. General Kirigan is like a father figure to her in a weird, gross way. And it's like, what? She's abused. I mean, what is she supposed to do? If General Kirigan is the only person that sees her and gives her some purpose, she's going to gravitate towards that, regardless if that's the right thing or not. It's just what's going to happen. Yeah. So I thought that Alina not really understanding that, and the writing in the scene, I don't know if it was supposed to be that way, but Alina just doesn't get it.
Yeah, Alina's defensive, I thought we were besties, is not really the way to go. I mean, I do appreciate that she says to her, yes, you absolutely deserve revenge on the king, but it was sort of weak. But I do think in the lasting sentiment of this scene, Alina is correct in telling her that as far as the Darkling is concerned, they are not his equals. They are only his pawns.
Exactly.
He's using them both.
Exactly. Totally agree. So, I mean, obviously, Genya's story is not done. And I think with something that Genya had said in this conversation, she was like, did I expect it to get to this point? No. But what choice did I have?
Right.
I think she realizes that she's like, I do love you, Alina, and you are my friend, but I got this bigger thing and I have to do this. Like, no hard feelings against you, really, but like, sorry.
It's interesting, right? To have a character who, in essence, has turned their back on our main protagonist, but yet we understand why they had to do that.
Right. I appreciate Genya. I think that her character is much more complex than I think you would think off the surface. So I'm hoping they explore that more later on. Next scene we get is General Kirigan goes and visits Mal. He's being held in some tent somewhere and he's chained to it. General Kirigan tells Mal that he read his letters to Alina. And he was like, it took you way too long. He's like, you don't appreciate her. He's like, you know, the difference between you and me is I have patience. Essentially, this whole thing is him telling him, you're going to die eventually.
Yeah.
Alina's not. She's going to realize in 50 years that she's like, oh, I can be with a man that won't age and be with me. I don't think that's a criteria for a good love story.
Right.
But you do you.
I waited until I forgot about how horrible you were. Yay.
I mean, it's perpetuating this like love triangle-y stuff with it. And it just, again, it goes to the whole thing of like the beginning scene was trying to humanize General Kirigan a little bit. But this scene, every scene after that, and everything he's done since creating the Shadowfold and everything he did leading up to doing that just tells me otherwise.
Right.
It's
also,
like, I don't feel bad for you.
No. And also look at his list. Murderer, sociopath, gaslighter, manipulator, mail fraud. Not okay. Reading someone's private letters? How dare?
That's a felony, a federal felony.
Thank you. And we know about the mail system in Ravka. Okay. We're not sure how it works, but it's there.
After General Kirigan leaves, Mal spots Milo. Our great little support goat.
Still waiting for the plush.
That helped Jesper through the fold. He's there. We know it's the same one because he has Jesper's bullet around his neck. How this bullet magically is able to fit into Mal's shackles is beknownst to me, but
gotta go with it.
He gets the bullet, makes it go off, gets out of the shackles, and escapes. Alina gets all dolled up, and she's ready to go into the Shadowfold. There's going to be a bunch of foreign diplomats on the skiff to witness this destruction of the fold, or so they think. Alina tells General Kirigan that he's a bad guy. This is this whole conversation of she's continuously getting manipulated. She's continuously saying he's a bad guy. He's like, we're equals. We could do so much, but never saying exactly what his plan is. And she puts it point blank in front of him. You're an awful person. Look what you did to Jenya. You killed my parents. You killed my friends. You created the Shadowfold, and you're not telling me you want to destroy it.
Yeah.
So what is happening here?
And she says to him, you could have made me your equal. You had that choice, but instead you made me this.
Right.
Which is a tool.
You didn't give her a choice. Like,
right.
You never gave her a chance to actually do some good, or even if it's not to destroy the Shadowfold. Let's put that on the shelf for a second. If your whole thing, from what you preach, is you want peace and equality for Grisha, why didn't you give her the opportunity to help you do that? Instead, you're just power hungry and wanting to do anything you can because you're a narcissist.
Basically.
And you want to control the most power.
Yeah, because if you think about it, he already ruined the country. He already split it in two, creating this horrible thing that nobody can cross, splitting families, destroying people, making them monsters. And he's not, that's not enough for him.
Nope.
And even from there, he created the thing that only Grisha could settle or get rid of. And they've become, for many people, saviors. And again, still not enough for him.
Right.
So for just hundreds of years, he's just been the worst.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's whatever. He's a black heretic. I think it's interesting in the show that they use the Darkling as more of a slur to him than, because in the books, that's his name almost.
Right.
Like, that's what he calls himself. That's what everybody really calls him. So I think it's interesting that they're like, no, that's a bad name for him. It's like, okay, well.
And what is...
There's worse names.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole thing was that, like, he needed to go and get a noble name, right, to sort of disguise himself. But I'm pretty sure Luda or Bagra in that flashback, they call him Alexander. So he has the same exact name he's always had as the Darkling, but everybody's forgotten.
But he has General Kirigan.
You're right. I don't know his last name. It was Darkling.
So after Alina and him have this conversation of, you're making me a pawn, you're a terrible person, he gets upset and he's like, make me your villain. I think you already are.
Make you? You already are.
You made yourself one.
Your actions have prescribed who you truly are, and I'm just telling you what you're putting out there in the world.
Right. So the end scene of this episode is building up to the very climactic ending of this season. So people start to board the skiff. Ivan tells General Kirigan that Mal escaped. We do see a little tiny Mal. It's like a big shot. And we see Mal getting onto the ship. So we know that he's trying to get closer to Alina.
Where did he get his papers? How did he get his tickets? I guess we're not going to know. It's fine.
It
was in the bullet around the neck. Also had a passport.
Alina and General Kirigan make their way to the ship. Obviously, you can tell here that people outside of the Darkling's close circle and Mal and the Crows, I guess, don't really know what's happening with Alina. They don't know that she's been captive, that she's being forced to do this.
Right.
Because as she's walking to the ship, people are bowing their heads. People are, kind of praising her like she is this saint.
Yeah, I did. I like this moment where she comes out of the tent and there's sort of a hush that falls across the camp and people are enamored with her. And they are doing this sort of like, it's not the sign of the cross, but it's whatever that faith's, I don't know, gesture is.
Yeah. And they get on the skiff. They bind her feet to like an anchor that's
This is normal. This is fine.
Yeah. She's like, oh, you don't think people are going to notice me being held prisoner? And he's like, they're not going to be looking at your feet. I'm sorry. I think it would be noticeable.
They all just watched you. Do it.
It wasn't like you did it before they got all on the ship. They were all watching you already on the ship.
Right.
And then you just bent down and attached her to a giant anchor.
Hello. No, we're fine. Okay, everyone's fine with this.
Not the best. We see in this final moment. So we got General Kirigan, we got Alina, we got Mal down below, we got the Crows off to the back. So they're all on the same skiff. And then they go into the fold. And that's where we leave this episode. I building up to this final moment, I was like, we're not going to get anything. We're not, the last episode, we have to wait until we get back into the fold. I knew it.
I did like, though, that when they sort of, right before they take off, she takes off the black kefta, and underneath she's wearing a gold dress.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of showing that she's the opposite of Kirigan.
Which
she is the light.
Yeah, I was happy about that. I was
Yeah.
like, get that off. Don't wear those black colors anymore. Boo, you look great in blue,
But with her antlers on display,
Yeah.
her necklace antlers.
Can we just talk about, so the rest of this series, the next 2 books, especially in the second book, so in the book, it's just it's like a necklace, like a big collar necklace that's fused onto her, not embedded in her, but she can't just take it off. There's no...
It's spiky.
Yeah, there's no clasp or anything to take off the collar. She always has to wear it. And here, it's fused into her, sticking up. She can never wear t-shirts again.
Nope.
By the way,
Only
boat
boat
necks. Yep. Or tank tops, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to have to wear this for the rest of the show. Like, unless they take it off in the second one, but part of where the story goes is she has that one and other stuff. So it's like, yikes. You're going to have to wear that prosthetic.
By the end of this series, she's going to look like some crazy
monster.
Half part human, part, I don't know, beast. It's going to be wild. Yeah, I agree. And I just think like, I feel like her time in the makeup chair was probably like nothing. And now she's got to get this prosthetic on every single day she goes in.
I mean, part of it, it's like, just CGI it. I would be like, can you like just do some movie magic? I don't want to wear these, you know?
Yeah, it's not the funnest thing to look at. I feel like it's that one season of American Horror Story Coven when the character was blinded.
Right.
Like her eyes were like burned out of her head, and it was just like, oh.
Yeah, it's like it's unsightly.
It's like the gross factor. Yeah.
It's cool to see, but it's just like, because there's a part of it too where, and I like this little detail that they did. So the antlers are sticking out where her collarbone is, and it's under her skin, but there's like a part on the right side where like some of the antlers sticking out of her skin in the middle of it. So I'm like, that's a neat detail because it's not just like super pretty.
Yeah.
It's like not pretty to look at.
Right. I mean, I guess which sort of shows the severity of what this means and how serious it is to have an amplifier bound to you.
I mean, General Kirigan just gets like a thing on the back of his hand. She's like, I have to walk around with this.
I know.
I have to wear a scarf.
He should have matching.
Put it on his head.
Yeah. Give him a horn. One horn.
So that's it for the lead up to the next episode. Super excited. We're going to be done with this. And then on to the next one.
That's right.
It's been an interesting journey so far.
Sure has.
Yeah.
But before we get to our final episode, of course, it's always time for a special segment, and it is Badass to the Bone. I would like to introduce you all to Juana Inés de la Cruz, 1651 to 1695, who I am calling our fiery feminist.
Yes.
Born in 1651 as Juana Inés de Esbaje y Ramirez y de Santillana to a single mother in Mexico, young Juana taught herself to read and write by the age of 7.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know what I was doing at 7.
Oh, probably not reading and writing.
Catching frogs.
Sure. Oh, cute. Making friends with ducks.
Yay.
She continued pursuing her love of learning and was even challenged by the Viceroy of Spain at 17 years old to see how smart she actually was. She, of course, blew him away. Like, they brought her in and, like, had, like, a quiz bowl with her.
Ooh, fun.
Being like, are you a liar? And she was really smart, so deal with that. Later in her life, she became a nun, which would allow her to satiate her thirst for knowledge and not have to worry about taking care of a man.
Hell yeah.
Between prayer sessions, Juana would write, but not only about religion. She wrote about love, philosophy, and women's rights, which many people did not like. They believed a woman should not have this much education or this much to say about the world. This, of course, did not sit well with Sor Juana. In response to these naysayers, she wrote The Reply of Sor Filotea. This reply outlined every reason a woman deserved to have an education and why a person's prestige should be based on what they have accomplished and not just but what their gender is. Juana Inés de la Cruz was the first feminist of the New World who fought for women's rights to learn.
Hell yeah. I mean, that was a long time ago.
And she's a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, she wrote these beautiful poems, and some people thought that she was in love with another woman, and she just never could be bothered with what men had to say about her life.
Good.
Because all it was doing was trying to push her down, and she's like, I don't know what your problem is, but I have something to say, and women have something to say, and our role is not only to take care of you.
I mean, the whole thing of like the patriarchy and misogynists and sexism, all that stuff, it doesn't make sense. Especially nowadays, it just absolutely, it's like you have women literally saving the world with creating the Pfizer vaccine. I mean, it's absolutely insane to me that people just don't understand that just because of what's in between your legs does not make you any less. The fact that she did this in the 1600s is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and she's actually really renowned in Mexico, and she's even on one of their bills.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, so she's incredible, and she's still remembered to this day. And it's just like you said, infuriating that hundreds of years ago, someone was saying, "Listen to me," and that message still hasn't gotten through to some people.
I mean, in the last 100 years, women got the right to vote.
I know. Humanity is an embarrassment. Goodbye.
Till next episode.
Thanks for listening to A Bite Of. Artwork and editing by our own Noah. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at A Bite Of Pod and on Facebook at A Bite Of. If you have questions, recommendations, or just want to say hi, you can email us at abiteofpod@gmail.com. You can find us on all podcast platforms. Please be sure to rate and review to spread the word. Hope you join us next time on A Bite Of. Bye.